The longsword is a two-handed weapon used in the late medieval period across Europe. It is called a hand-and-a-half sword and bastard sword. It has a long, straight, two-edged blade measuring about 40 to 50 inches long. The sword has a hilt of about 7 inches and a large rounded pommel at the end of the hilt. It can weigh between 2.5 and 5 pounds. A key characteristic of this weapon is its versatility. It can be wielded with either one hand or two, and can be used in unarmored or armored combat. The longsword could also either be used on foot or on horseback. This weapon emerged in the 1300s across Europe. It was mainly used in knightly combat. The longsword came into being at a time when mail armor was given way to plate armor, although the exact reasons why the weapon was created is still unknown. By the 1500s, it was only used for sport, and continued in sport until about 1700.
A very early example of a two-handed sword. They start to get to the point in the 1200s where they can make a really long blade like this that won't break on them in battle. The metal quality has improved to that point. And this really makes possible the two-handed sword, something that's never really been possible up until that date. And you can tell it's a true two-hander with this really long grip, and I can certainly feel it with the weight in my hand. The balance of this really requires two hands to control it. So I would really need to wield this in both hands in order to make it work.
There were a number of important masters of the longsword during the Middle Ages, many of whom originated from Germany. Johannes Lichtenauer was one of the greatest German fencing masters, active during the 1300s. He established a tradition of fighting techniques that carried on for centuries. Lichtenauer never wrote any manuscripts or manuals, but he composed verses about his teachings that were written down and interpreted after his death. The Starhemberg manuscript is one of the most important documents in the Lichtenauer tradition. Written in 1452, this source contains a complete rendering of Lichtenauer's teachings for the longsword's use on foot and on horseback, and armored combat. Lichtenauer's teachings also influenced Johannes Lecoucner, a 15th century German cleric and fencing master. Although Lecoucner's treatise of 1482 focused on the single-handed sword, the techniques are largely the same as a longsword. Lecoucner is one of the most important sources of Lichtenauer's style of sword fighting. The last major German author on the longsword was Joachim Meyer. Meyer was a fencing master in the late 1500s, at a time when the longsword was only used for sport. Still, his Art of Combat, published in 1570, remains in the Lichtenauer tradition. Meyer's manual is a comprehensive encyclopedia of traditional German martial arts. However, perhaps thanks to Italian influence, Meyer provides a much more detailed and systematic explanation of the longsword combat than the earlier German sources, and his work stands as one of the most important texts of the medieval German tradition. Not all major masters of the longsword originated from Germany. Fior dei Liberi was an Italian fencing master in the late 1300s. He wrote Fior dei Battaglia, or The Flower of Battle. It was an influential combat treatise that contained descriptive text and images for longsword techniques. Fiore's teachings were copied by other Italian masters and even appear in German manuscripts, giving clear evidence that his influence extended outside of Italy. Fiore's teachings can still be seen in the Italian treatises of the early 1500s, though by the mid-1500s this medieval weapon had fallen out of fashion in Italy.
Actually presenting the target. And there's multiple positions. This is the high guard, long point. Rapid, long point change. Start.
I know. I like because if you open and take it, I'll learn.
From side guard through long point into unicorn. Side guard, long point, unicorn.
Attack.
Like this. For armored combat, I'll hold the sword with my left hand on the blade. This gives me the pinpoint accuracy with the thrust that I need in order to target the gaps. Here, this is a low guard that, protecting the right side of my body, a high guard protecting the right side of my head. And from here, I can also do what is called a murder blow, turning the sword around in my hand and striking with the hilt. Plow on the right, ox on the right. Advance with the vertical cut. Advance with another vertical cut. Retreat with the vertical cut. Retreat with the vertical cut. Vertical cut with a triangle step. Again. High, low, away. High, low,